Hey, it's Andrew, and today on the show we have Yuval Keshtcher, the founder of UX Writing Hub. In today's episode, we talked about the art and science of UX writing and how it can be a game changer when it comes to improving conversion, reducing churn, and increasing revenue. Yuval also shared how companies can use metaphors to maintain copywriting consistency, his step-by-step process in helping companies enhance their copy, and a real-life case study of a previous client of his. Lastly, we also talked about how using shady tactics and dark patterns can damage your brand and customer attention, and why copywriting is the first step of reducing churn. As usual, I'm excited to hear what you think of this episode, and if you have any feedback, I would love to hear from you. You can email me directly on andrew@churn.fm. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter, and enjoy the episode.
How do you build a habit-forming product?
You need to invest.
And we saw these different...
You don't just gun for revenue in the door.
This is CHURN.fm, the podcast for subscription economy pros. Each week, we hear how the world's fastest growing companies are tackling churn and using retention to fuel their growth.
How do you build a habit-forming product?
We crossed over that magic threshold to negative churn.
You need to invest in customer success. It always comes down to retention and engagement.
Completely bootstrapped, profitable, and growing.
Strategies, tactics, and ideas brought together to help your business thrive in the subscription economy. I'm your host, Andrew Michael, and here's today's episode. Hey Yuval, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. It's good to have you on the show. For the listeners, Yuval is the founder of UX Writing Hub, the official one-stop shop for online UX writing resources, providing in-depth education, articles, workshops, courses, product team training, and more for UX writers and product teams from all over the world. After creating the largest UX writing discussion group called Microcopy, was actually where I first came across Yuval on Facebook. He collaborated with UX writers from Google, Amazon, PayPal, Fiverr, NASA, Wix, and more to offer the first ever UX writing course. So my first question for you is, Yuval, what is UX writing and why should we care about it?
All right. So UX writing is basically the craft of creating copy for a digital interface. And that's only part of the craft. Basically, what a UX writer expected to do is to work in a product team and as more or less a product designer and to own the responsibility of the copy of the web interface or the application or all of the digital experiences basically that's related to the company. And it varies between the sizes of the company. So as you know, like many different roles, as the smaller the company is, the more responsibilities. So basically, the role varies between the sizes of the company. So if it's Google, so they could have someone that is hands-on UX writer for a very specific part of the product, or only for the Google Maps, or like 5 different writers working on the Waze app of Google. But if it's a smaller company and it's not Google, so probably the UX writer would be in charge also. It can be in charge also on marketing aspects, emails, transactional emails and stuff like that.
So the role varies quite a bit then, obviously, depending on the size and scale of the business. And what is sort of like the main goal of a UX writer? Like if you had to pick like 2 or 3 things that a UX writer is always trying to do, what would you say like is their purpose in a company?
So basically, I would say that like a UX designer, or product designer, the idea is to connect and create a bridge between the business goals and the user needs. So at the end of the day, there must be some kind of a balance between the business goals and the user needs. When the goal in total is to create just a better user experience for the digital product of that company. For example, if I work for Dropbox as a UX writer, so my 2 focal points would be, okay, how can we bring more subscribers to pay for our services at Dropbox? And also, how can we reduce the frustrations of the users? I would connect between the business goals and the user needs.
Okay, so I mean, this is something as well, I think, when it comes to UX writing, and mentioned in a previous episode, that it's often overlooked. And you mentioned, obviously, depending on the size and scale of the company, you have different focuses. But I know a lot of the times, like in the early days for startups, it normally like copy and UX writing is almost the last afterthought. It's let's design the screens, and then last minute it might be an engineer even or a product designer who's putting together copy. What are some of the things that you would suggest to companies who want to get started in this practice, who want to get better at sort of introducing UX writing into their process? Like, what are some of the things that startups can do with limited resources to get a focus and improve the UX writing?
So that's a really good question, even for UX design. Was always something that is very hard to persuade for a company. Many companies that say 20 years ago, you would tell them, hey, we need to improve the user experience product, and they wouldn't understand exactly what are we talking about. But now we had digital revolution, everybody have mobile devices, many different digital experiences. And it's pretty obvious that the better the experiences of your digital product, so the more money that your company will make eventually. It's not the only parameter. It's also related to the quality of the technology, of course, and also marketing efforts and sales efforts and so on and so on. But at the end of the day, if you will compare two apps solely on the frustration or the amount of joy that people produce from them, so the app that produced more joy or less frustration for the user would probably be more successful. 10 years ago, we had to, and I'm a product designer, by the way, I'm a product designer with my background, used to be a graphic designer. So I said that 5 years ago, we had to say to companies that they need to invest in user experience, and we had to promote it. And now, much more people understand the value of UX design because it's kind of obvious to many people now. So UX writing is having the same thing right now. It's a relatively new role. Not a lot of people understand the value of it, but at the end of the day, when your app communicates much better with your users, the success of your app is going to skyrocket. You're going to get more subscribers, more paying users, and all of that. What I want to say is that the copy of the interface have a direct impact on the amount of money that a business could make.
Yeah. I think what you're saying as well in terms of like the practice of user experience design and a focus on that experience, it definitely has evolved over time, where before, like you used to see some standout apps that had these amazing experiences. And nowadays it's sort of like a given, like you're not going to use a tool unless the experience is amazing. And I can see the same thing happening now with UX writing, like really not much thought given to it like 5-10 years ago, and slowly more companies are realizing the value of having a really good and clear communication strategy when it comes to their app and educating their users with their pain points. Because I think at the end of the day, you can have a really slick UI, but if your app is not communicating to users in the right way, if you're not guiding them to the key actions that they need to be taking, and if your app is filled with ambiguity or not clear direction, I think you're definitely going to struggle in the next 5 to 10 years to compete.
And I would just want to have a comment on that, because that was a really great remark. So probably right now, business owners or product managers or people from different SaaS companies saying to themselves, all right, so we've heard you guys. It makes a lot of sense. So we just hire a copywriter, and we would just put copy into our product and everything is going to be fine, right?
Yeah.
And
tell us why it's not the same thing, why it's not going to work.
It's not the same. So it's not the same thing. So what I like to compare it is like having a UX writer is like using iPhone for the first time. Until you use it, you don't know that you need one. But once you work with the dedicated UX writer, it's like a game changer, because that person would not only create nicer copy in your interface, they will do user research. They will understand how to create and how to communicate a message in context. So let's say that they will just break all of the user flow of sign-up process, or even canceling of subscription process. And they will just communicate it in a better way that it will increase conversions or reduce churn and all of that beautiful things that you need for a business.
Yeah, I've seen this happen as well many times where it would just be like, let's try and bring another writer in. But there is a definite skill when it comes to UX writing, because the challenge with UX writing as well is it's not the number of, like, every word you put on a screen is precious, I think. And you need to be at the one time make sure that things are really, really clear and explaining to users, but at the same time you need to be cautious of real estate a lot of times as well. And being able to communicate messages in like the most succinct manner that it's crystal clear to the end user of what needs to be done. I think it's an art and a science as well. Like, it's not sort of this long form copywriting that people might write a blog post. So somebody who might write excellent blog posts is not always going to equate to become an excellent UX writer. You talked a little bit about the process, and let's, Zach, maybe you want to explain to us a little bit more in practice of how you would go about, and you gave an example of the exit flow for a SaaS business. And let's say like somebody comes to you and says, I have this exit flow now. I want to try and reduce churn, and I want to give an experience to my users as they're exiting the app. What would be your process involved? How would you go about sort of deciding which pages to get started with? Like, what would be the copy that would be going into it? And maybe you want to run us through like a process of a client had to come to you and how you work with them.
All right, that's a really good question, and I have a few different point of views to this answer. So if they hire me, for example, as a dedicated in-house UX writer as part of the product team, so I would just go into and work with the team of the product designers, understand, just communicate with everyone, listen to everyone, understand the pain points and what is the main focus right now. And if the main focus is on exit intent or reduce churn. So I'll try to understand what is the current messaging that we have today. I will probably look on how competitors are doing it, how other people are doing it. I will try to find a way to maybe speak with the users, so we can use Hotjar to collect feedback, for example, or we can just be in a relationship with our users, send them an email, send a questionnaire. We can also, and this is a trick that I really like, and I call conversation mining, is like we can just find where your users are online. So for example, if you are working in a company that creates a dog sitting app, so I would go to Facebook groups of people that are dog sitters, and I would see like which kind of language they use, which kind of jargon, which kind of words they use to communicate with each other. And I have some kind of like a sheet or Airtable that I just document all of those words in an organized way, so I know I could use them after. And then it's time to do the writing. It's try to understand what is the technical limitations, and speak with the developers, understand if they're a button, add a piece of text. Usually you can, because text is thing to do as a developer, but you do need to also speak with the designers, say that like it's okay to put text over there, or to add text, or to edit text over there. And now it's really depends on, you can do right now a content audit for the current flow, understand what is not working, and then suggest some kind of a way to improve it. And then you can use the data a few months after to just optimize it. So this is one example. Another example, if I'm a freelance UX writer, or if I'm coming as an agency, which is also something that I did for a few clients. So what I will do, it's not that different, but I will probably invest 1 week just to learn this client from inside out, because you don't have the privilege to work in the product team, so you must do your research. You must learn the people of the product team. It's really a game of communication for this part. So if you're a freelance UX writer, my tip for you is to work on the way that helps you to communicate the best with your client.
Yeah, that makes sense. I also like what you really said around sort of the trick when it's going online to try and see the language that the users are using, or the language that your potential customers are using. Because I think this is like a big problem that a lot of startups make, is sometimes they get too technical in their copy and they forget to empathize, and they forget that there's actually humans at the end of it. And what you might call a platform or a service or software it's actually a solution to people's problems. And being able to communicate in a language that your customers use, I think, is a super powerful and valuable skill to master.
Right, because at the end of the day, you want the platform to feel human to the other side. So if, for example, you write an app for 18, know which kind of language they use, and without the research, you just don't know how to create conversation with them.
Yeah. So talking about sort of like working as an agency freelancer, you mentioned you've done that for a few clients. Like, is there particularly like one case that you can speak to where you used UX writing and it had a big impact on the business when it maybe came to engagement or usage of a specific service?
So that's a really good question. There was a project 2.5 or 2 years ago that I worked with a company named SodaStream from Israel. It's pretty well known in Israel and also in the world.
I think globally, yeah.
What they're doing is creating soda devices, and that's about it. Like, you buy SodaStream, you have in your home sparkling water, and there is a thing with the device is that you have gas that you use to operate this device. And the gas is not unlimited, and it's usually after 1 or 2 months, you can't use the device anymore if you don't have enough gas. So basically, the company hired me to build some kind of a new feature for their e-commerce website. So we had to redesign and just create a strategy of the whole e-commerce experience of SodaStream. It was a huge project because it was for I think 20 different countries, and there was a lot of data scattered, and we had to transition ERP systems. And it was complicated for many different technical ways. But what I was in charge of was to create a subscription feature. Many people were too lazy to buy that, the gas, and they just didn't use the product anymore because they were too lazy to just go outside, go to Walmart and buy. So we tried to build some kind of a feature, a subscription feature, that people would just get gas to their doorstep every month, and then there's going to be a whole recycling aspect for it. And that was pretty complicated to communicate, like how exactly I'm going to start it, when exactly I'm going to get those packages, and how it's going to work. So that was a huge challenge. We worked on it for around 6 months on the whole website, but that was the main focus of the website. That was the main conversion that we worked on, because we wanted to just make more people to use the subscription feature, because else, you just pay every month, and the company, the importance of subscription, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And it was a huge challenge, and we interviewed different design agencies to create the strategy that we planned. There was a lot of challenges about the wording. Should we use the word cylinder, or should we use the word gas, or should we use the picture of a gas or a picture of person holding the gas? So there was also a lot of design challenges, and also we wanted to just show the process also of how it's going to work. So it was 3-step process. It was really important to communicate it well, so people would actually use it. So I just know that once it was implemented, it was it was a huge success, and I didn't have the chance to work with them afterward. So I don't have the actual numbers of churn rates and how it went over time. The number that I got about the conversions of the new website, and that's what I received from the boss that I had back then, was 51% increase in the conversions of the store that we've created, their e-commerce store. But that's only according to I just it's according to him, and I really haven't had a chance to look on the numbers myself.
Yeah.
And that was a pretty successful project, and it opened me for many other, not successful, but many other really interesting new directions. And it was a really nice case study that was a great leg up to my career.
Yeah, and I can see like how the value there of really strong and good UX copy can make a big difference, because you're introducing a new service into an existing business. You're actually introducing a new subscription revenue for the business as well, and it's not something that customers have been familiar with doing in the past. It's something new to them, and it's going to actually make an improvement for that ongoing engagement of the product as well. So you're not only creating a new revenue stream by having this good copy and putting together this package, but then you're also encourage this ongoing usage. And the power of copy, I think there is really key in getting that message across, so people understand A, that this problem exists, and B, that now you have the solution that's solving it for them as well.
Exactly. And how you communicate it in the product page, and how you make people to go first to the subscription option and not to the actual store. There's like a lot of different optimization that you try to lead the users in a way that will benefit the business. As I said, connecting between business goals and user needs.
Yeah, and you mentioned something as well that was interesting. I wanted to get your input on too. Is you mentioned like the concept we didn't know if we should call it a cylinder or gas or holding, and you had specific terminology. So my question is, like, I think a lot of times within startups, like we have specific terminology that's for our business, but there's multiple different ways of saying things. And what do you advise as some sort of like best practices? Like an example being like, do we call our users visitors? Are they customers? Are they trial users? There's always sort of this confusion in terms of terminology specific to your app and how you communicate, and then how this is used throughout your documentation and explaining. And what are some best practice you see when it comes to sort of like the copy governance, if you want to call it that, to ensure that everybody's using the same language and you're communicating the same way to your customers?
So this is a brilliant question, and I'm really glad you put it up. And I wasn't expected to actually ever. I never thought that I will answer this question, because I didn't. It's like in my brain, but I never talked about it. But there is a huge impact in this case for metaphors. It's crazy. For example, there is a company named Zest, an Israeli company. They give inspiration for people.
Yeah.
You probably, I don't know if you know them. They work with Hotjar sometimes as well.
Yes.
But they just promote content to top marketers by top marketers, and they call their users the tribe. Okay, so this is a very interesting metaphor, and like their users know that they are the tribe, and all of the people in the company knows that they are the tribe. And just pretty interesting metaphor, because when you use metaphor that way, it's really easy to understand like the context. I have another example of, for example, Airtable. So Airtable is a really good product, and it's like I really like using it. It's like Google Sheets on steroids, and they have some kind of you can build the table from scratch, or you can use some kind of pre-made like how do you call it? Pre-made table. Okay, let's say that you want to build on Airtable a CRM, so you have like a pre-made CRM that you can use. And the way that they call the whole like place of creation of those pre-made templates would be Galaxy. So it's Airtable Galaxy. And it's very like fascinating, and you think what you have in the Galaxy. So that's a really interesting copy. Zapier, for example, it's an app that integrates between two SaaS tools. So you can connect between your Google Sheets and your Typeform, for example, through Zapier. So when you want to create a Zap, so first of all, Zap is a metaphor because it's Zap. It's like, zip Zap. And if you want to have a pre-made integration, so you need to go to the recipes, and then you find a recipe. So it's all metaphors: recipe, Zap, the Galaxy, the tribe. It's all metaphors, but it's really let the users and the people in the company understand terminologies that are fun and that they connect people,
Yeah, I like that as well. And it definitely moves away from sort of like the complexities of, if you had to try and imagine like the direct translation of what Zapier does with the Zapier recipes, I think the terminology that you would come up with would be a lot more complicated and a lot less easy to understand. I like that, metaphors.
Exactly. So metaphors is a great example, and there is a really nice article by John Seto. He's a product designer at Dropbox. He used to be a UX writer, if I'm not getting it wrong.
Yeah.
We have a complete article about metaphors, and that article blew my mind. So I really recommend to add it to the show notes if possible.
Cool, definitely do that. And the one thing that I think that just comes to mind, though, is when you said metaphors, I can definitely see how they can be useful. But at the same time, I think sometimes they can potentially be abused to the extent where companies might come up with their own specific terminology for something that's already been done and working well. So something that comes to mind potentially is like likes. The like button, commonly used terminology, used throughout sort of most social media. If somebody comes along then and tries to add a new feature and it does the same functionality as a like button everywhere else, but you call it a Zapier, like a happier Zap or whatever, or like just an example now, then it sort of can also be confusing to some extent, where it's like you're taking something that people are already familiar with, terminology, and trying to make it your own, or make it into a metaphor that's relevant to your business could also be dangerous, don't you think?
Like abusing other terminologies to your company is like when you take a solution by one company and you just copy the same solution to your company and you think it's going to work. So it's not going to work. UX is all about planning and understanding. And if your last conclusion is that you need to call it a like button, regardless to what Facebook was doing, so call it a like button. But you can just copy a feature and expect it to work as good for you, because in design, in copywriting, it's just not going to work. People are not going to appreciate it as well. Try not to abuse copy. And never use jargon and stuff that people don't get, and just make sure that your clarity is on top of your mind. So the metaphor is not too complicated or something like that.
Yeah, and like maybe not reinventing the wheel when it's not necessary as well.
Exactly.
The other thing as well is like, I think when we think about like UX copy and some of the experiences that I think sort of delight people is they tend to sort of take a more human approach to their copy and maybe a little bit more playful in some cases. Like when you think about UX writing, sort of how do you strike a balance between like good copy, functional copy, but then also still have a bit of personality, and that you don't also maybe go to the opposite extent where you try to be too funny or try to like add too much personality, and then you end up losing like the functionality side of things. Sort of like, what is your process? How do you go about thinking about sort of what is the copy that you want to bring to this app or this experience?
So it really depends on the effort that you're doing right now. It really depends on the project that you have on your plate right now. So there is a chance that there is an error message that no one in the company wrote, and you have like maybe less than a day just to understand something quickly, how to write it, and you just write it down because it's like an edge case, and maybe not a lot of people are going to look at it, so you wouldn't want to invest all of your time in something like that. So that's one thing. On the other hand, you have like key screens that you want to craft your copy and to tighten it, like a pricing page, for example. You want it to be top notch. You want it to make sure that everything is clear and that you don't make any mistakes. And you need to go, first of all, with your gut feeling, like everything, if you don't have data. But if you have data, try to work also with your data. But also, if you have data, also add some gut feeling to this too, because sometimes like data, of course, right? But maybe we make the wrong assumption. So go with your gut feeling, make some kind of an hypothesis, deploy the copy, and test it. That's what design is all about. Test it and optimize it. If something works less good, so just change it back. If something works better, try to use it a little bit more. And did it answer your question?
Yep, to some extent. And I have a follow-up as well then, is that, so in terms of like the copy and then the experience and like the experimentation side of things, I think like when you think of a SaaS app, there's a lot of copy being used on like maybe loads of different pages. What do you do to try and like ensure that you have consistency, and what are some best practices to make it easy for a UX writer to be able to like run experiments quickly and test out different copy changes? Are there any special tools that we could look out for, or is there any sort of processes that you've got locked down so you know what copy is on which page, and then if you make changes, like how that's going to influence things down the line?
All right. So designers had something called design systems that made sure, like probably many listeners know about material design by Google, which is a very famous design system, right? And the idea of the design system is to create alignment between all of the design that's coming from Google, for example. Similar to that, writers have a content style guide, okay? And with content style guides with design systems, it really depends on the size of the company. If it's small, so you're not going to have probably a well-established content style guide. But if we're talking about companies like Shopify, Google, Atlassian, the most common example of an open source content style guide is MailChimp. So you're going to see how people create some kind of a voice and tone of like how we write error, this is our do's, this is our don'ts, how we write for accessibility, and they go very specific on those style guides. So my tip for the listeners would be, if you're a small company and you're just building a content style guides and you want to create some kind of alignment with the rest of the writers of your team, go find other content style guides and take inspiration from them. I created an article called the Top Content Style Guides. So you have a list with all of the content style guides out there, so you can check it out. And if you are working in a big company and you're working on a content style guide, so try to, go between all of the writers in your organization and find some kind of a common ground. Go to the different screens of the different apps, of the different products. Try to understand like what's the rhythm of the copy of those products, and build your own content style guide if you have enough resources to do it.
Yeah, very nice. And you gave some really good examples there. We'll definitely add that in the show notes for people to check out. I'm also a big fan of MailChimp's one. I love it. I think both
this one is pretty famous. I love their copy a lot. I don't like their product that much. Personally, I don't use it.
Surprise, yeah.
But I think that the copy is pretty impressive. Game-changing, impressive.
For sure. They managed to nail like a good combination of personality and brand, but also functional and specific. So the next thing I wanted to sort of ask is something I ask everybody that joins the show. Is let's have a hypothetical scenario now. As a UX writer, you've been offered a new role and you join this new company, and you see churn and retention is not doing well, and you've actually been asked to try and turn things around for this company. What would be some of the things that you would do in the first 90 days to get results?
Right. So 90 days are a lot of days. So I'm going to have a lot of time, which is great. So basically, I'm going to get all the numbers. Okay, see like where is the dropouts, where people stop buying, or just when people want to just cancel the service. If it's a big company, there's probably going to be some talented data scientists in that company. So I will ask for some, insights about like what's working and why, and for which company, which countries, and I will ask for this, interesting data. And then I will try to have some insights about, okay, they sign up to our platform and now they don't want to use it anymore. So what it could possibly be? It could be about the pricing. It could be about the fact that it wasn't what they were expecting. It could be about they don't need it anymore. So first of all, I will probably create some kind of a form that asks anyone that is about to cancel, like what's the reason that are you canceling? And I'm sure that this is not new and many people know about this trick already probably. So that's what I would do. And then I will gather more data about the reason that I have like this churn. And let's say that it's about the fact that it's too expensive. So what wasn't clear about the fact that that's going to be the price, or what makes our value proposition so low that it's not communicated well in the pricing page, that people ask for their money back afterwards, or they ask to remove it at some point. And so I would just look on different use cases, collect data, and make data conscious decisions and keep it clear as possible so people know exactly what they're getting, so we could reduce the churn. So probably they expect one thing and they got something else. So I would try to understand what didn't meet their expectations and see how can I use copywriting in order to meet with their expectations even before they sign up for the first place.
Yeah, I think that's a super, super powerful message there. And it's definitely something that's very often overlooked as well in terms of like the promise fits as well. When you talk about it, it's like what you're promising your customers in terms of your copy and their understanding, but maybe on the pricing side of things, what the value prop is, and actually what you deliver at the end of the day. If it's not aligned and you're not doing a great job there of communicating that value, like you've already lost before you even got started. You mentioned something as well that we chatted about just before the show, and maybe it was something that you did, but in terms of sort of the cancellation flow and reducing churn from people who actually want to get their money back on returns, like this is something that you mentioned that had happened within your business. Maybe you want to let us know and elaborate a little bit about that.
Sure. So basically, like any business, the UX Writing Hub is a company, and we have a lot of content that we deliver to our audience, newsletter, free stuff, and job board. And there is a big community essence inside of it. And we sell courses. And to be honest, in the last, like we had already like 4 different course. And we managed to reduce the amount of refunds to 0%, which is pretty impressive. So the numbers of people in each course is not that high. It's not like thousands. It's not even hundreds. But I think that the fact that we just communicate really well what's going to happen in the course, what is the outcome, and show a lot of credibility during that process, that we are collaborating with big companies and that we know what we're talking about, maybe hiring more mentors with more experience in the field of UX writing, and we managed to sell, I would call it like a content product, like a course, in a way that makes people very satisfied, because in the first courses, we did have a few refunds, and now we don't have them anymore. But to be honest, we do have a use case where people are saying that they wasn't expecting this course to be that intensive, and they're too busy, so they just ask us to move them to the next course. So this is also a lesson that I learned, and I'm trying to implement it, and to communicate the fact that this is an intensive course. Like that's exactly how it works. You need to communicate so people will know what they receive, and I think that what helps us to reduce the churn or refunds, or how do you call it? How would you have to call it? But to a very, very, very small percentage.
Yeah, it's you mentioned a few different things here. I think that's valuable, and it's sort of really it came down to that promise fit versus like what you were selling on your website versus what the course and the actuality was, and realizing that using social proof, gaining credibility by introducing new mentors to the program, really was one, serving sort of that social proof side, but two, adding value to it. And then I think it just shows like a really good understanding and listening to your customers as well. So at the time of asking for refunds and churning, you get a good picture of what their pain points are. So it's a great example of sort of using good copy to make sure that to begin with, you're making a really, really clear statement and clear message of what to expect. And then when they do get started, like there's no sort of going back and saying, well, this is not what I was expecting. It's like you've made it black and white for them.
Of course. And I have another tip, which is, let's say that you did receive the refund, or someone that want to unsubscribe from your services, for example. So don't be a douchebag about it. Many SaaS companies don't understand that they can't put dark patterns when people want to leave their services. So don't put dark patterns. It's not ethical. It's not cool. When someone asks for me for a refund, I just give it to them. I make sure that they're like, everything is good, that, as long as it's to the agreement that we had beforehand. But I always give them the best attention that I could, so it wouldn't happen again, because nobody likes churn refunds. And it's also about even if they decide not to get your product right now or to stop, there might be your clients in the future. So don't leave a bad taste in their mouth. Just be
Don't
nice
be a
about it.
douchebag.
Yeah, be
Yeah.
kind, be nice. Too many SaaS companies, when we're talking about unsubscribe right now,
Yeah.
they're hiding the cancel button, hiding the unsubscription button. You need to go to settings, profile, and then you have really poor design for the fact that it's going to unsubscribe me. A lot of SEO tools just charge you automatically without even asking you first, or it's kind of annoying. Many low cost airlines also this is really bad for your churn game.
For sure. And this is what you're talking about in terms of dark patterns, just for the listeners, is when you really specifically try to engineer and make it difficult for users to cancel your service or to trick them into taking specific actions that are maybe beneficial for you, but not for them. So I totally agree with you. Don't be a douchebag. If you're building a SaaS product, make it easy for your customers to do what they want, because ultimately it's very, very short-term thinking. When it comes to these dark patterns, because you might in the short term decrease churn or increase revenue, but in the long term you're damaging your brand, you're damaging word of mouth. And in a subscription business, word of mouth and retention is going to be your biggest driver for growth. So
it's all you have today. Community that just help each other out. That's you must invest all of your effort in the community, and that people will be happy with your services.
Absolutely. Well, Yuval, it's been a pleasure having you on the show today. Is anything last thing that you'd like to leave the listeners with? How can they keep up to speed with your work? How can they learn a little bit more about the practice of UX writing?
So first of all, thank you for having me. It was a blast, and I can't wait to listen to it and relearn from it, because it was really great. About the UX Writing Hub, we have a weekly newsletter every Wednesday at 10 a.m. sharp. Everyone gets the newsletter. So you can sign up on our website. I can also add a link and send it to you, so you will add it in the show notes. We have a podcast. That's one is bi-monthly, which means twice a month. We have Writers in Tech podcast, so you can look it up if you want me to listen to me interview UX writing industry leaders. And you can also try our free course in the website, our free course in the website, which many people said that it gave them a lot of value. Or go to our blog as well. We have many great resources for UX writers on our blog as well.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for joining the show, and wish you best of luck now going forward.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Cheers. And that's a wrap for the show today with me, Andrew Michael. I really hope you enjoyed it and you're able to pull out something valuable for your business. To keep up to date with CHURN.fm and be notified about new episodes, blog posts, and more, subscribe to our mailing list by visiting CHURN.fm. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our show on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. If you have any feedback, good or bad, I would love to hear from you, and you can provide your blunt, direct feedback by sending it to Andrew at churn.fm. Lastly, but most importantly, if you enjoyed this episode, please share it and leave a review, as it really helps get the word out and grow the community. Thanks again for listening. See you again next week.